Good morning, Mr. Pretorius. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Chair.
Before we start, I just need to say something. Since the commencement of Mr. Agrizzi's evidence, there have been a number of people who were mentioned by him in his evidence who have written to the Commission complaining that the Commission did not warn them in advance about his evidence, namely that he was going to implicate them. The Commission will be responding and is responding to them, but it seems that it's necessary that I mention that on the first day on which Mr. Agrizzi gave evidence, there was an application that I had here at the hearing in which the legal team of the Commission explained why advance warning had not been given to implicated persons. They gave reasons in open, and at the end thereof, I indicated that I would not make a decision on whether or not there was justification for not giving advance warning, but I indicated that on the face of what I had been told, it did appear that there was justification. But I said I would leave the issue without deciding it to enable any implicated person who wished to make an issue of the lack of advance warning to do so in due course, and then I would deal with the matter at that stage. That is the first point I want to clarify. The second point is that the legal team made it clear that except for the advance warning and the fact that the statement or affidavit of Mr. Agrizzi was not given to implicated persons ahead of his evidence, apart from that, all their rights as set out in the rules of the Commission would be observed, and that in due course they would be given relevant portions of the statement or affidavit so that they could deal with the allegations against them. So I just want to make that announcement again, because it does appear that not everybody appreciated that the explanation as to why advance warning was given here in open, and that indeed there is no intention on the part of the Commission not to allow people who are implicated an opportunity to respond to the relevant portions of Mr. Agrizzi's statement. And there is also no intention on the part of the Commission to preclude anybody from initiating any processes in terms of the rules of the Commission in order to protect their rights and interests. One of the letters we have received says that there is no guarantee that the Commission would recall Mr. Agrizzi once he has finished his evidence, but anyone who was listening yesterday or watching would have heard at the end of Mr. Agrizzi's evidence what I said. Mr. Agrizzi himself indicated his continued preparedness to come back and give evidence. So people must know that They must just follow the rules, and the Commission will make sure that their rights are not infringed in terms of those rules. Thank you. Mr. Pretorius, you may proceed.
Yes, if I may just add to what you have said, Chair, the issuing of notices to implicated parties has been continuing for over a week now.
Yes.
Secondly, a transcript of the application to you in respect of Mr. Agrizzi's evidence made on the first day in which he gave evidence is available to implicated parties who wish to have regard to the application and its content.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. van Tonder, you have your statement in front of you. We were dealing with the evidence on page 6 of that statement, and we had reached paragraph 32.
Mr. van Tonder, you are still under the same oath that you took yesterday, so I'm just mentioning that I won't be mentioning it each time. Until you finish your evidence, you are under the same oath.
I understand it, Chair.
Okay.
Do you recall a meeting which took place at the time the SIU investigation had just commenced, where there was discussion of a pact?
I recall it, yes, Chair.
Who was present at that meeting?
It was Gavin Watson, Ronnie Watson, and Valence Watson, Angelo Agrizzi, and myself.
Would you tell the Chair, please, of the content of that meeting?
It was agreed that there was a pact formed, and everybody should abide by the rules of this pact in terms of not speaking to anybody about the wrongdoings which we were implicated in the SIU report.
Was any assurance ever given to you by Mr. Gavin Watson?
Yes, Gavin Watson told us that he had everything under control.
Did he give any detail?
He basically said he had access to the highest levels within the Hawks and National Prosecuting Authority, and therefore we need not to worry.
Okay. Were you in Paris with Mr. Agrizzi and Mr. Gavin Watson when you first received the content of the SIU report?
Yes, I was in Paris, Chair.
After that, were you given certain functions to perform and instructions from Gavin Watson?
It included, but was not limited to, attending concerns raised by banks, auditors, and I was told to be vigilant of any potential incriminating documents, which including invoices that I might come across.
What type of invoices?
The invoices that might incriminate the company.
What were you supposed to do with those documents?
I was supposed to bring it under the attention of Mr. Gavin Watson, and he would do with it whatever he felt fit.
Do you want to give us an example or two of the types of invoices that would fall under this category, which you had to be careful about?
Yes, it was invoices, for example, for houses that were built
Built for whom?
It was built for Mr. T and Mr. Gillingham.
Okay.
How were these invoices or the expenses reflected on these invoices accounted for in the books of Bosasa?
As far as I can recall, it was accounted in the books of Bosasa in a normal way as if it was expenses or capital expenses that was incurred by the company itself, because at the time there was a lot of renovations that was done on certain of the buildings within the Bosasa group.
So were these expenses reflected in the books as legitimate business expenses?
As far as I can recall, yes.
And was
Chair.
that the representation that would have been made to the South African Revenue Services?
That would have been reflected as such to the revenue services, yes, Chair.
Was it a correct reflection of the position? To reflect those expenses in that way, was it correct?
No, it was unlawful, Chair.
Yes, okay.
If we can move on then to the next part of your evidence, please. You speak in paragraph 34 and following of a vehicle being purchased. Please tell the chair about that purchase.
It was in December 2006 that Bosasa purchased a new Volkswagen Polo for a lady called Megan Gillingham, the daughter of Patrick Gillingham.
Do you know what position Patrick Gillingham held at the time?
I knew he had a senior position within the Department of Correctional Services.
Had you met him?
I have met him, yes.
Did you receive an instruction?
Yes, I received an instruction by Gavin Watson to facilitate the purchase of the vehicle for Megan Gillingham.
Did you inform any other persons within the Bosasa group of companies of this instruction?
Yes, I informed Angelo Agrizzi and Dr. Jurgen Smith about the instruction.
Did you comply with the instruction?
Yes, I immediately complied to the instruction.
When Gavin Watson issued an instruction to you in the normal course, what was his expectation?
Chair, his expectation was to leave everything as is and immediately attend to what he has instructed you to do.
How did you carry out the instruction?
I arranged through the accounts department to have a cash check made out in order to draw the cash and to deposit the cash into the Volkswagen dealership's bank account. The check required 2 signatories. I signed the first signatory and I've sent the check through to Dr. Smith for a second signatory. Dr. Smith then came into my office and told me that we cannot pay for the vehicle by means of cash deposit. And he continued saying that he did discuss this matter with Gavin Watson, and he advised that Gavin Watson instructed him to do what he sees fit in order to pay for the vehicle. And I was instructed that by a specific method of paying for the vehicle.
And what was this method?
I signed a personal loan agreement with Dr. Smith. Then Dr. Smith transferred the money from his personal bank account into my personal bank account. I then transferred the money from my personal bank account to Volkswagen at the Glen in order to pay for the vehicle. 1 to 2 months thereafter, Bosasa transferred the money plus an amount to allow for tax and interest payable as per the loan agreement to Consilium Business Consultants.
Part of the Bosasa group of companies.
It's not part of the Bosasa group of companies, but it was used by the Bosasa group, yes.
A related,
That's the right word.
it had its offices at the Bosasa office park.
That's correct, Chair. Consilium had its offices at Bosasa Business Park.
Carry on, please. The money now follows this route to Consilium Business Consultants.
Yes. From Consilium Business Consultants, the money plus interest was transferred back into my, I've skipped one section, Chair.
Yes.
1 to 2 months after the money was paid over to Volkswagen the Glen, Bosasa transferred the money plus an amount to allow for tax and interest payable to Consilium Business Consultants. From Consilium Business Consultants, the money plus interest was transferred into my private bank account. To the best of my knowledge, the tax was deducted and dealt with within Consilium Business Consultants, Chair. And then I transferred the amount plus the interest from my private bank account back to the bank account of Dr. Smith.
All right. That's quite a complex trail
Yes,
of money transfers
that is correct.
through various accounts, but the vehicle ultimately, by whom was payment made?
Bosasa did pay for the vehicle ultimately.
But at the time of the actual purchase of the vehicle and maybe delivery thereof, would you have been reflected in the books of the dealer as the buyer of the car or not? Who would have been reflected as the buyer?
Chair, the vehicle was, as far as I can recall, was registered in the name of Megan Gillingham. I was just a contact person to Volkswagen the Glen.
So when you transferred money, was it the full purchase price you transferred to the dealer?
That is
from
correct.
your account?
That is correct, Chair.
So when you transferred the money from your own personal account to the dealer, it would have been on behalf of Mr. Gillingham's daughter or Mr. Gillingham?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay, so in terms of the books of the dealer, the purchaser remained either Mr. Gillingham or his daughter, whoever it was that had put his name or her name.
Yes, the vehicle was registered in Megan Gillingham's name, as far as I can recall.
In the name of the daughter?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
Part of the series of transactions you've told the Chair was a loan agreement that you signed.
That is correct,
Do you know
Chair.
where that loan agreement is now?
Chair, at the time of the SIU investigation, I handed the loan agreement to our legal team who assisted us in the Bosasa in the SIU investigation. I do not have it in my possession anymore, nor I have a copy.
Let's then deal with the next issue that you raise, and that is the SEARK project, SEA, capital ARK, one word. Would you tell the Chair
Before
about-
you do that, Mr. Pretorius, this whole complicated transaction for a simple thing of just buying a car, at that stage, did you understand what the purpose was of getting involved in all these transactions in regard to the purchase of Mr. Gillingham's car?
Yes, I understood it, Chair.
What was the purpose?
The purpose was to get a mechanism for Bosasa to pay for a car for Patrick Gillingham's daughter.
Without Bosasa appearing as having paid for the car?
Yes, that is correct, Chair. The purpose was to create a mechanism to pay that Bosasa, that the money does not reflect directly as being paid as from Bosasa.
In other words, to conceal the true identity of the person who paid for the car or the entity that paid for the car.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
And did you have any knowledge yourself of why Mr. Gillingham or his daughter were benefiting at the expense of Bosasa? What was the purpose of this purchase?
As far as my understanding was, that was to get favor from Mr. Gillingham, who was high up within correctional services at the time.
May we then proceed to the SEARC project? And would you tell the chair of the evidence you set out in your affidavit from paragraph 38?
During 2005-2006, Gavin Watson commenced with the process of building an aquaculture pilot project in the Kuga IDZ in the Eastern Cape, Port Elizabeth, called SEARC. A company, SEARC Pty Limited, which was 100% subsidiary of Bosasa Operations, was established for that purpose.
All right, we will see, Mr. van Tonder, that this was quite an expensive operation. Who funded it?
Bosasa Operations, or the Bosasa Group, funded this, Chair.
And what was the project all about?
The project entailed the breeding and growing of prawns, seawater prawns, in a controlled environment.
Right. Was there another company involved?
There was an American company involved called Sustainable Resources International, through which the American consultants were remunerated.
Right. So consultants were employed, am I correct, by Bosasa and the companies through which Bosasa was working for the purpose of implementing the project, am I correct?
That is correct, Chair.
You said a minute ago that the project was founded by Bosasa Operations, and then you changed it Bosasa Group. Is that because you wanted to correct what you say at paragraph 39? In other words, is there a difference between the Bosasa Group and Bosasa Operations Pty Limited? Did you intend to say it was any one or more of the companies under the Bosasa Group, as opposed to saying it was Bosasa Operations Pty Limited? I just want to make sure that you are aware of what you have said in the statement and what you have said in oral evidence.
What I'm saying, Chair, is, if I can just explain, Bosasa Operations is the holding company of all the other operational companies within the group. And yes, Bosasa Operations made all the payments for this, for the purpose of this project. But the funds that was generated was not necessarily generated by Bosasa Operations itself. The subsidiary companies had to contribute as well. But Bosasa Operations indeed made the payments.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right. The evidence, as I understand it, that you've given Mr. van Tonder, is that a 100% subsidiary of Bosasa Operations Proprietary Limited was established in order to administer the business.
Of the aquaculture business, that's correct, Chief.
That company was Sea Arc Africa Pty Limited.
That is correct, Chief.
The project was, however, funded, you say, by Bosasa Operations Pty Limited through various means.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And what role did Sustainable Resources International LLC play?
Sustainable Resources International, to the best of the monies, there was a large sum of monies transferred to Sustainable Resources, up to the amount of approximately 50 million rand over the period of, I would say, 3 years. And that was earmarked to pay consulting fees to various consultants to the project.
So Bosasa, in its function as funder of this project, which was operated through its subsidiary Sea Arc, paid consultants 50 million rand over a period of time in order to facilitate the implementation of the project.
Yes, that is correct, Chair.
We'll get to the point of this evidence in a moment, but was the project successful?
The project was not successful in the light that we could not continue with the commercial grow out of the project or build out of the project due to the lack of funding. We could not get funding to for this purpose, and also there was some other operational concerns which prevented this project to be continued.
All right, let's just pause there if we may. In your position as the Chief Financial Officer within the Bosasa Group at the time, were you involved in the finances of which you speak here?
I was very much involved in the application for funding on the project, Chair, if that is what you asked.
So the financial transactions of which you speak here, you had direct knowledge?
That is correct, Chair.
The fee of 50 million rand paid to consultants seems large. It may be genuine, I don't know, but was it a genuine transaction?
They would, if I understand answer your question correctly, they would invoice on a monthly basis for this purpose, and Bosasa had consent from the bank to do these transfers to overseas company.
So this 50 million rand was paid to overseas entities?
To the Sustainable Resources International, which was an American-based company.
Do you know whether value for money was received by Bosasa in relation to the consulting services you speak of?
In my opinion, Bosasa did not receive value for money, Chair, on this matter.
All right. But let's go on. You say the project, for various reasons, was unsuccessful. Was the project then terminated?
Yes, the project was then terminated, Chair.
In the books of Sea Arc Africa, was any outcome recorded on the termination of the project?
On the termination of the project, Sea Arc, there was an assessed loss reflected of 138 million rand in the books.
Is that the figure, the full correct figure in paragraph 43 of your affidavit?
That is correct, Chair. That is 138,498,378 rand.
Right. And how was that assessed loss derived?
The assessed loss was derived from expenses on the project, and also the equipment write-offs relating to the project in the books of the company.
The equipment that Sea Ark intended using or used, was that equipment purchased?
You're referring to paragraph 44 now, Chair?
Yes, I am.
I refer here to a prawn processing plant. Not that the processing plant would be used to process the prawns after they were harvested. And this processing plant, Chair, was never used or unboxed at all.
Yes, but it was indeed purchased and would have formed part of the losses of Sea Ark, I understand.
Yes, this equipment was written off in the company income tax for income tax purposes, Chair.
Now, after termination of the Sea Ark project, you will recall that the company Sea Ark Africa Pty Limited had been established for the express purpose of operating this prawn plant, aquaculture plant. What happened to its main business, or how was its main business subsequently recorded or conducted?
The main business of the company was changed to accommodate the utilization of the assessed loss for tax purposes within the kitchen operations of Bosasa operations.
All right. Well, let's just explain that a little. Bosasa Operations Pty Limited had at the time various kitchen or catering contracts.
That is correct, Chair.
Are those the contracts with the Department of Correctional Services?
That is correct, Chair. I'm referring to that.
Right.
And it also had another kitchen which was utilized to cook food for people in a youth center and the Landela Repatriation Center.
All right. So various kitchen or catering contracts with various government entities.
That is correct, Chair.
Those contracts were held by Bosasa Operations Pty Limited.
That was held by Bosasa Operations Pty Limited, Chair.
Were those contracts generating profits in the hands of Bosasa Operations Pty Limited?
Those contracts did generate profits, yes, Chair.
Now, the loss that Sea Ark had suffered in relation to the aquaculture project, how was that loss utilized for tax purposes?
Well, after the main business of the company was changed, the name of Sea Ark Africa, company Sea Ark Africa, was changed to Bosasa Supply Chain Management Pty Limited. And it acted as a procurement company for food items. These food items was on-sold to the various kitchen operations at an average profit margin of 20% to Bosasa Operations, which held the kitchen operations, if that makes sense.
So Sea Ark Africa Pty Limited changes its business purpose.
Yes.
It then purchases food items to on-sell to Bosasa Operations Pty Limited.
That is correct, Chair.
And it marks those items up substantially.
Approximately 20%, if I can recall that, Chair.
And what is the result?
The result was that the assessed loss in Bosasa Supply Chain Management could be utilized for income tax purposes of the day-to-day businesses of Bosasa Operations, which was still continuing.
How did that occur?
Basically, the food items were on-sold from Bosasa Supply Chain Management to Bosasa Operations at a profit margin. And that profit margin was then, so in Bosasa Supply Chain Management, there was a profit reflected. And that profit was offset against the reflected assessed loss within Bosasa Supply Chain Management, and that is how it was utilized. Chair.
So, but was it necessary to interpose CARC or Bosasa Supply Chain Management Pty Limited in order for Bosasa Operations Pty Limited to procure the goods? Was this a necessary, genuine business transaction?
It was a genuine business transaction on the procurement side, but the on-selling of the food items to Bosasa Operations from Bosasa Supply Chain Management, that was not because of the fact that there was a profit margin included for purposes of, as I've explained now, that was not right.
Well, the tax experts will no doubt look at the evidence and deal with it. You are experienced in tax matters, I presume.
I've got limited experience in tax matters, Chair.
What was the value of the benefit to Bosasa Operations of the introduction of the scheme?
The value of the benefit was approximately 38,700,000 rand.
Right. In other words, the assessed loss incurred by CARC in the aquaculture business was then used to offset profits in this arrangement of procuring food items for Bosasa Operations Pty Limited. Am I correct?
That is exactly correct, Chair.
Now, was there an investigation?
Yes, SARS conducted an investigation on this matter, Mr. Chair.
What did they investigate in particular?
They investigated the utilization of the assessed loss and the existence of the assessed loss within Bosasa Supply Chain Management and Bosasa Operations. And they also investigated the equipment write-offs in the books.
Right. And were you involved in responding to the SARS investigators in relation to these matters?
I was indeed involved, Mr. Chair.
In order to justify the use of the assessed loss and the write-offs, was it necessary to present evidence to SARS?
That is correct, Chair.
And what had to be done in these representations to the SARS investigators? You deal with that in paragraph 47.
Two things, we had to show two things. The first thing is we had to show that the CARC project continued. And we did it by building a prawn production facility in Krugersdorp, Gauteng. And an entity for this purpose was created called Bioorganics Pty Limited, and which was also a 100% subsidiary of Bosasa Operations. This project was funded by Bosasa Operations, and just for clarity's sake, artificial seawater was manufactured to grow the prawns in for this project. And Gavin Watson even invited President Zuma to the facility in Krugersdorp, and I was formally introduced to him at the facility. So the first thing that had to be done for SARS purposes, we had to show that the project continued. And the second thing that we had to
Just
do
before
was...
you go on, was this a genuine operation? Was it a commercially viable operation? Are the prawns that we eat possibly from Krugersdorp?
It was a very successful operation. We bred beautiful prawns.
Carry on, please.
Then the second thing that had to be done was that we had to show that the processing plant equipment that I've mentioned before, that was never unboxed. We had to show that it was installed and being utilized within the various kitchen operation of kitchen facilities in the group. None of this equipment, however, was used in any of the facilities, kitchen facilities within the group. And we had to show that it was installed into the kitchenette facilities, and we've explained it as such, even though it never happened.
So that part of the investigative process and your response thereto was clearly a misrepresentation to SARS.
That is correct, Chair.
I see that you mentioned that on a certain occasion, President Zuma was invited to this project, and that is where you were introduced to him, former President Zuma. Now, there has been evidence that Mr. Gavin Watson used to indicate that he had interactions with him. Was this the only time that you witnessed a visit by former President Zuma to a Bosasa project or Bosasa premises?
That was indeed the only time I witnessed it, yes, Chair. I was never present at any other of the meetings.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So I presume that the tax matters related to the evidence that you've just given, the content of the investigation, the queries and responses, quite complicated. We're not going to go into any detail now, but you say, at least in part, misrepresentations were made to SARS in the investigation.
That is correct, Chair.
Did SARS assess the loss that you've spoken of, or part of the loss that you've spoken of, as legitimate?
Yes, SARS was convinced, we managed to convince SARS of the above explanations, and that the assessed loss was indeed legitimate. And they only disallowed a small portion of the processing plant write-off, Chair.
Was that a fair and lawful result?
It was not a lawful result, Chair.
What happened after the SARS investigation was then concluded, as you say, in favor of Bosasa?
Well, a couple of months after the success we had in the SARS investigation, Gavin Watson phoned me up, and he instructed me to close down the bioorganics project with immediate effect and retrench the staff. He also he continued to say, and do it today still. I pointed out to Gavin Watson the following day that closing down of the bioorganics facility was in contradiction to what was reflected to SARS investigators.
You had told the SARS investigators that this was a genuine ongoing business operation.
That is correct, Chair. SARS also visited the prawn production facility in Krugersdorp.
And after the conclusion of the investigation and after its outcome had been communicated, you now receive an instruction to close the facility down.
That is correct, Chair.
Was this order or instruction to close the facility down and retrench all staff discussed amongst other persons within Bosasa?
I did discuss it with Angelo Agrizzi.
What was the content of that discussion?
I told Angelo Agrizzi that we cannot terminate the project and close down the facility because of the reasons explained. And Angelo Agrizzi agreed with me that we cannot, and it is unlawful, to terminate the facility now, the prawn production facility now project.
Did Gavin Watson learn of your view?
Well, when Gavin Watson got the impression that Angelo Agrizzi and myself were reluctant to close down the facility, he instructed Carlos Bonifacio, who was the head of the accounts department of Bosasa operations at the time, to attend to it and to make sure that the operation gets shut down. And because of this, I was completely sidelined, and my opinion was ignored when they closed down the bioorganics facility.
And it was indeed closed down, you say?
That is correct, Chair. It was closed down.
The processing equipment, was that later sold?
Yes, the processing equipment was later sold. That's correct.
You deal in the next paragraph with cash.
Before that, Mr. Pretorius, at the time that you were interacting with SARS in regard to this project that we have just dealt with, did you believe that it was a genuine project at that time? Or did you know that it was intended for something else, for unlawful purposes?
I believed that it was indeed intended for the other purposes as was explained, Chair.
You believe now, or you did believe at the time of interacting with SARS that it was meant for unlawful purposes? That's what I want to know, whether it's the belief you formed after, or whether even as you were interacting with SARS, you did believe or you knew that it was meant for unlawful purposes.
Yes, while I was interacting with SARS, I believed it was just there as a smokescreen.
Okay, thank you.
There has been evidence over the past 2 weeks, of which you're no doubt aware, Mr. van Tonder, of the need for and the manner in which Bosasa generated cash for the purposes, amongst other things, of bribing government officials. You're aware of that?
I'm aware of it, Chair.
In paragraph 52 and following, you give details of the manner in which cash was generated. Please tell the Chair of what you know in this regard.
Gavin Watson required a substantial amount of cash every month, and it would vary from month to month, and over the years it escalated quite considerably as well.
How was this cash generated? You
Initially, Chair,
can tell the Chair in your own words of what you record in this affidavit at paragraph 53 and following, if you would.
Initially, Chair, the cash was generated by means of drawing the cash from Bosasa's bank account. And how it was done was that we had to create fraudulent documentation to attach to a check requisition to request a cash check from the accounts department. And it was motivated by, we were contracting SMMEs who had no bank accounts and therefore had to be paid cash. And the reason for the cash check. The method of drawing the cash became problematic because the amounts that Gavin Watson required became too large.
All right, let's just stop there if we can. Cash checks would be issued by Bosasa or by Bosasa companies in the group.
That is correct, Chair.
The requisition for the cash check would be accompanied by an invoice, for example, for construction work,
Correct, Chair.
to pay in cash to small businesses or other entities.
That is correct, Chair.
And were those invoices fake?
It was indeed fake, Chair.
Right, carry on, if you would. You say that the amounts of cash became too large to utilize this cash generation facility or arrangement.
Yes, that is correct, Chair. If I may go to paragraph 54.
Well, just please speak about the last 4 lines, please, in paragraph 53 before you go on.
Okay, the last few lines just addresses the nature of these fake documentation or invoices that was created. It was, for example, non-existing labor brokers. And again, it was motivated by a labor broker who had certain staff that and who did work for Bosasa, and they required to be paid in cash, as well as copies of Metropolitan funeral payout documents were made and also attached as source documents for these cash requisitions. Chair.
So one of the methods used was that a fake invoice would be created in the name of a non-existent labor broker, purportedly or on the face of it, to pay employees in cash their wages.
That is correct, Chair.
And we've heard evidence about the Metropolitan scheme, but you say that documentation was also used as part of the cash check requisition process.
That is correct, Chair.
Were any other methods used? You can go on to paragraph 54.
Yes, in order to supplement the cash requirements, cash would be collected from a canteen at Landela Repatriation Center, and also the canteens and bars at the various mine hostels, which was run and operated by Bosasa.
And in paragraph 55, you talk of a
share in
garage
Belfast.
in Belfast.
Yes, a share in Belfast Toyota was acquired, as it also had a business of a fuel pump station and a kiosk which generated cash. Bosasa, Belfast Toyota would invoice Bosasa for fuel sales, for the cash taken, and the cash would be transported to Bosasa head office on a daily basis.
Did it actually occur that Bosasa purchased the fuel for which it paid?
That was that was what the documentation reflected, but there was never fuel received from Belfast Toyota, Chair.
So, in essence, Bosasa would pay for fuel not received, but receive cash in return.
That is correct, Chair. That's what happened.
And then in paragraph 56, you refer to another scheme?
From time to time, we were instructed to utilize AA wholesalers in order to collect additional cash. Bosasa would be invoiced by AA wholesalers for goods that were not delivered, amongst other genuine deliveries and transactions.
So some of the invoices were fake invoices again. No goods were delivered against those invoices.
Yes, some of them were fake invoices.
But Bosasa would nevertheless pay.
Pay, and instead of receiving the goods, receive the cash, Chair.
Then let's look at paragraph 57. What do you say there?
Bosasa had an arrangement with Rian Hoeksma from Rikele Construction to arrange cash from a liquor wholesaler in Randfontein. Rian Hoeksma had the relationship with the liquor wholesaler. Gavin Watson would phone me up and tell me when he needed cash delivery. I would then advise Jacques van Zyl of the amount of cash that was required. Jacques van Zyl and certain people in the accounts department would attend to the administration side of the transaction, of which I had no insight into. Once the cash was ready for collection, I was notified by Rian Hoeksma to collect the cash from his offices in Randfontein, which I did.
Well, as I understand your evidence here, you received an instruction from Gavin Watson to obtain cash or attend to a delivery of cash.
That is correct, Chair.
The administration in the business would do the administrative work in relation to the receipt of cash. You had no involvement in that.
I had no involvement in the administration part, Chair.
But you actually collected cash, you say.
I collected the cash, that is correct, Chair.
Who actually gave you the cash which you collected?
Rian Hoeksma at Rikele Construction's offices gave me the cash, Chair.
And then in paragraph 58, you talk of another method of cash generation.
This was the largest method of the most substantial method of getting cash. And it was done through a company called Equal Trade, which was run by a person by the name of Greg Laken Allen.
That's LACON-ALLIN.
That is correct, Chair.
Right. What happened?
Initially, just on a background, Jacques van Zyl was responsible for the ordering and collecting the cash from Equal Trade. Gavin Watson then instructed that this function be handed over to me on about, if I can recall right, July 2016.
Were you responsible for the administration side? How this would be recorded in the books and other things?
No, I was not responsible for the administration side, Chair.
Right. And what role did you play?
Greg Laken Allen would send me a message via WhatsApp on a Monday morning requesting order requirements for the week. And I've attached a copy of these WhatsApp messages as an annexure to my affidavit.
Let's go to 83. It's on page 32 of bundle T. Is it T1 or T? Bundle T1. There are some email messages there. What are they? Not email, WhatsApp messages there. Explain to the chair, please, what we read here on page 32.
Page 32, this is a WhatsApp message received from Greg, Lake and Allen. Hi Andries, I'm just checking if you have any orders for this week, regards. And I would reply, hello Greg, I haven't seen Gavin yet, but we'll find out and let you know. And then he would follow up on it. Gavin or Alan, Greg, Lake and Allen would follow up saying, hi Andries, any news, regards. And then I would respond, morning Greg, I will ask Gavin this morning, regards Andries. And it carried, and I've made, and you will see the rest of the annexures, it's got a lot of content regarding these WhatsApp messages.
So was this a regular occurrence?
It was a weekly occurrence, Chair.
If you look at page 34, in the context of the request for orders, because I think we need to explain how this request for orders actually worked in the scheme of generating cash. Do you see page 34?
I see it, Chair.
Almost halfway down the page, against your name and against the date 13 March 2017, Andries : 1 ton chicken, please. Now I presume that it's not correct that actually there was an order for 1 ton of chicken, or I may be wrong.
No, it was never chicken deliveries, and it was merely a code name for the cash to be delivered.
How much cash did 1 ton of chicken represent in code?
1 ton of chicken would represent 1 million rand.
So chicken was a code for cash.
That is correct, Chair.
And was it not being called cash or money because it was for bribery?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay.
If you could just take a moment to look at Annexure 83, is there anything there that will confirm the evidence that you're giving? I wouldn't necessarily understand all the communications here. So, for example, if you look at...
Did you say 83?
No. AT3. Letter A, letter T, 3.
Oh,
on page
83.
32. Yes, I'm sorry, Chair.
Okay.
If you go to page 36, for example, 3/4 the way down the page, there's a reference there against your name. The exact quantity is 1.550 tons. What does that mean?
Sorry, Chair, I just want to get to the right place. What date is that? The 14th?
Page 36.
Yes.
Against the date 19 June 2017, 1027.
That is correct. 1.550 tons reflects 1,550,000 rand.
Sorry, that's on the 14th of June at 1537. On the 19th of June, it's 1.45 tons. But in essence, what you're saying is the figure of tons is really a figure of millions of rands.
That is correct, Chair.
So what we see here in Annexure AT3 is a series of communications between yourself and Greg Lakin Allen intended to arrange the obtaining of cash from Mr. Lakin Allen.
That is correct, Chair.
Who would tell you what amount of cash was needed?
Gavin Watson would tell me, Chair.
Would he also give you detail in relation to particular amounts and times and the remaining logistical issues regarding receipt of cash?
Gavin Watson would just tell me how much cash he would require.
So who would collect the cash?
I did collect the cash.
From whom?
It was delivered at a filling station or at a shopping center close to Lancero Airport. I collected the cash.
And what did you do with the cash?
Then I would take the cash back to Bosasa head office.
And what would you do at Bosasa head office with the cash?
I would lock the cash in a safe which is situated in a walk-in vault in the company secretary's office.
Okay, let's go to paragraph 60, because there you describe, at least in part, how the obtaining of cash pursuant to your communications with Greg Lakin Allen was accounted for in the books. First of all, was this a genuine accounting in the books?
It was accounted in the books as food consumption.
Is that correct?
But it was not correct. It was fraudulent.
Well, tell the chair, please, of the accounting arrangement or the recordal in the books that you described in paragraph 60, please.
Basically, I would notify Jacques van Zyl about the requirement of cash. He would then make the necessary arrangements in the accounts department. He would arrange for the payment first thing to be done. And
of course, you would have to pay
yes,
Equal Trade or Greg Lakin Allen.
yes. And this payment included a 12% commission.
Who received that commission?
I can't, as far as I know, it was Greg Lakin Allen.
But the purpose of the commission, I understand it, was to pay for the trouble taken by Equal Trade or Greg Lakin Allen in providing the cash.
That was the purpose of the 12%, Chair.
Yes, and the orders to justify the payment to Equal Trade, were those genuine orders?
No, it was not genuine orders, Chair.
Paragraph 61, you describe the scheme further.
So the order sheet was prepared in our accounts office, and then this order sheet, the purpose of this order sheet was to allocate this amount to the various kitchen units for Greg Lakin Allen's business to enable them to invoice Bosasa. So it was a big amount, so this amount had to be broken down to the various kitchen units. And that was the purpose of this order sheet that was created.
So, as I understand it, a fake invoice would be created.
Later on, yes.
Later on. But an order would be issued for the apparent purpose of providing foodstuffs to various catering facilities conducted by Bosasa.
We refer to it as an order sheet, yes, Chair.
Right. Were these genuine purchases?
No, it was not genuine purchases, Chair.
Would the expenses reflected in that purchase be represented to the revenue services as a genuine operational expense?
To the best of my knowledge, it was reflected as an expense in the books of Bosasa.
Yes, carry on. Tell the Chair, please, of the
Okay.
arrangements you refer to in paragraph 61.
Then what the order sheet was now created, and it would be sent. I would send it off to Equal Trade from a separate Gmail address called johnforrest@gmail.com. That is the email address that was used. This email address, if I may, was created not by me. I inherited this email address, John Forrest. But this is through which the communications were done to Equal Trade in this regard. So the proof of payment, together with this order sheet, would now be mailed to Greg Lake and Allen's Equal Trade, and we would arrange for a cash delivery the cash delivery 1 or 2 days later.
Would that then be followed by the invoice, as you've said?
Yes. What would happen then is about a week later, Equal Trade would send Bosasa the invoices which was generated based on the order sheets which was sent to them. And it was for items that Bosasa never received.
The items on the invoices, were those recorded in a manner that could avoid SARS raising VAT queries?
Indeed, so Chair, it was all non-VAT items.
Right. Then in paragraph 64, you make certain further observations regarding this cash generation arrangement. Explain what you're saying here about the normal invoice payment dates and arrangements, and whether these arrangements of which you're speaking differed from the normal arrangements.
Yes. Payments for this purpose was always done prior to invoicing. And this is in contrary with the normal day-to-day operations of other suppliers to the group. They would only get paid 60 days after statement, and this was which was completely different to the day-to-day normal operations. And the items and the invoices were not followed through the normal channels. The unit leaders at the various operational sites and the storemen, and they've never seen these invoices, and they haven't stamped those invoices.
So in summary, as part of this scheme at least, you would receive a fake order, you would pay for it, and you would receive in return cash minus 12% commission.
That is indeed how it happened, Chief.
And then there would be a scheme whereby fake invoices would be created to make the operation appear legitimate.
That is 100% correct, Chief.
And you say, as far as you know, I presume you don't have direct knowledge, but as far as you know, the expenses reflected would actually be deducted from operational expenses for the purposes of tax returns.
That is correct, Chair.
I see you said that these payments were made prior to the invoices, but in your statement you say prior or on the dates of invoices. Do you stick with prior to, or sometimes prior, sometimes on?
No, these payments were always done before the invoices was generated, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
It's a convenient time, Chair.
We'll take the tea adjournment and we'll resume at 11:30. We adjourn. Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Van Tonder, yesterday you gave evidence in regard to the video footage that had been shown here during the course of Mr. Agrizzi's evidence. And you told the Chair that you had actually recorded the video. You told him why you had recorded the video.
Sorry, should I tell you, Chair, why I recorded the video?
Well, you've already told the court.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already told
He just
the Chair.
wants you to confirm whether it's true that you have confirmed that you took the video and that you have told me why you took it. So if you remember that you have told me, you say yes. If you don't remember, you say no, I don't remember telling the Chair.
I remember telling the Chair.
Right. So we don't have to repeat what you say in paragraph 65 on page 13. But tell the Chair, please, of the system in relation to the handling of cash within the Bosasa offices that you talk about in paragraph 66 and following.
After I collected the cash, I would take it to the Bosasa head office, and I would lock it in a safe which is situated in a walk-in vault in the company's secretary's office. The reason for that is Gavin Watson was normally not available to receive the cash when I arrived with the cash at the offices.
So this is the cash that you collected as detailed earlier in your evidence this morning.
That is correct, Chair.
Right, and then in relation to the management of the cash after you had put it in the vault?
Gavin Watson would phone me, and he would, when he needed the cash, and he would instruct me to bring it from the company's, where it was locked now in the company secretary's vault, bring it or take it to his personal vault, which is...
Now, would there be any recording of the amount you put into that safe each time you put money into it? Would there be a recording of how much you put in on what date in the safe?
Yeah, I would just take everything I had.
No, I mean when you had gone out to collect cash.
Yes.
And you came and took it to the safe that is in the walk-in vault of the secretary. And when you put the money into the safe, would you record, or would somebody record how much you put in on what date? And when you took it out, would there be someone to record that?
No, Chair. There was no recording done by myself in that safe of the company secretaries. No,
or by anybody?
Or by anybody.
Okay, all right.
Yes, we'll deal perhaps with that issue again in a moment. You say that you deposited the cash you received from various sources in the company secretary's office vault in a safe there. You were then instructed by Mr. Watson to take cash to him in his vault, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
You'll recall on the video, there is, at the beginning of the video, a recordal of someone taking a cardboard box from a particular place in the Bosasa office park to Gavin Watson's vault. Do you recall that?
Yes.
What does that video represent at that portion of the video?
If I understand your question right, that is, in that box is the cash.
Right, and who's carrying the cash?
Myself.
From where to where?
I would carry the cash from the company secretary's vault to the vault of Gavin Watson.
And when you arrived at the vault of Gavin Watson, would you meet with anyone there?
Yes, Gavin Watson was there, and there were other people also present in his vault.
Right. And on the particular video that you took, who was present in Gavin Watson's vault when you arrived?
If I can recall right, it was myself, Gavin Watson, Johannes Gumede, and Papa Le Shabane.
In Gavin Watson's walk-in vault, were there any safes, or how many safes were in that vault?
There were 3 other safes in his vault, of which one is a drop safe, Chair.
One is what safe?
A drop safe.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you say 3 other safes. How many safes in Gavin Watson's walk-in vault?
There are 3 other safes in Mr. Gavin Watson's walk-in vault.
Well,
When you
other
say
than
3
what?
other, it suggests that it's more than 3. Is it 4? Is it 3?
No, it's only 3.
Okay.
But there's a safe in the vault from which you've come, the company secretary safe.
Yes, that is in a different vault. There is a safe that is in the company secretary's vault.
Yeah,
where the money was locked.
There's a safe in the company secretary's vault,
Yeah.
one safe, and in Mr. Gavin Watson's vault, there are 3 safes. That's what you are saying.
That is correct.
Okay.
Actually, Chair, there are 2 smaller safes in the company secretary's vault, but only the one was used for my purposes of storing the cash.
Okay, thank you.
And a drop safe, what is that?
That is one of the safes in Gavin Watson's vault.
Yes, but what is a drop safe?
It is a safe that's got a small entrance where one, just big enough to drop cash into the safe.
But not take it out again.
Can't take it out.
All right. The 3 safes in Gavin Watson's walk-in vault, do you know their purpose?
The purpose of that was to store the cash until such time as he required the cash. Chair.
Right. During the conversation that takes place on the soundtrack of the video that was played to the chair, mention is made of a person called Patrick. Do you know who that person is or was?
Yes, Chair, it's Patrick Gillingham.
And do you know that from your own knowledge?
I know it from my own knowledge, Chair.
Were you ever given instructions in relation to Patrick Gillingham?
Yes, Chair, I was.
Sorry, I interrupted you. What were those instructions?
I was instructed to take him a delivery of cash.
That is that the father of the daughter or the lady that Bosasa bought a car for in terms of the evidence you have given us?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay.
Right, did you carry out the instructions given?
Yes, I delivered his Patrick Gillingham's cash for him.
To whom did you hand the cash?
I handed to Patrick Gillingham himself, Chair.
And how was the cash packed?
It was packed in a grey plastic security bag, Chair.
Right, and where did you make this delivery or these deliveries?
I made the delivery at a shopping centre close to Lansera Airport, Chair.
You will recall that during the video and on the video soundtrack, references made to an amount being 6,000 Rand short. Do you recall that?
I recall it, Chair.
If there was no record kept of amounts cash delivered, how would anybody know that there was a short delivery of cash?
When Gavin Watson took delivery from the cash from me, the box would be opened and the cash would be counted. And It was a basic reconciliation to make sure that the amount of cash that was received is indeed the amount that should have been delivered according to the payment that was made, less the 12% commission.
And to that extent, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Chair. And the previous delivery, there was a 6,000 rand short delivery on the previous delivery, and that is that was the 6,000 rand that was discussed in the safe, Chair.
So somewhere, you say you weren't always involved, or you weren't involved in the administrative processes, records would be kept, which would then indicate whether there had been a short delivery of cash. That would be notified and rectified.
Yeah, the short delivery of cash was just between myself and Gavin Watson. Again, Gavin Watson would look at the, I would have a proof of payment, which was made, and where I've deducted the 12% commission, which got to the net amount of cash that would have been received. That amount, that paper was also seen by Angelo Agrizzi, that specific proof of payment. I told him about that. And then basically, Gavin Watson would look at the amount, the net amount, and made sure that the actual amount of cash that was received corresponded to the net amount that should have been received. And should there be a shortfall, like in this case the 6,000 rand, it had to be recovered on a later stage from equal trade.
Let's take it step by step. With regard to equal trade, and you will tell me later on whether the same applied to other entities that you may have collected cash from, but just equal trade. I think your evidence was that, I don't know whether all the time, but was that you collected the cash from Lanseria. Is that right?
It's a shopping center close to Lanseria.
Yes, a shopping center close to Lanseria.
Yes.
Now, when you went there, did you know how much you were going to collect, how much was going to be handed over to you?
I knew then, correct, Chair.
How would you know?
Because I would arrange or ask for Jacques van Zyl to arrange for the payment to be made for a specific amount as requested by Gavin Watson.
So would your knowledge be based on paperwork that would have preceded this stage?
You're 100% right.
Including the order and so on, and invoices?
My knowledge would be based on paperwork, yes, Chair.
Yes.
That is right.
Now, when you arrived at the shopping complex next to Lanseria to collect the cash, would the cash be minus the commission in quotes already?
That is correct, Chair. It would only be the net amount.
Yes. And then you would then bring it to Bosasa.
That is correct, Chair.
You would go to the company secretary's walk-in vault, and you would put the money into one of the safes there.
Correct, Chair.
And at that stage, no recording took place as to how much you put in.
That is correct, Chair. No recording at that stage because I never opened the box without Gavin Watson being present.
Yes. And then you would only remove it to take it to Mr. Gavin Watson's safe.
That is correct, Chair.
And you would only do that when Mr. Gavin Watson had instructed you to do that.
That is correct, Chair.
When you took it out from the safe in the company secretary's vault, again, nobody would record what you took out, how much you took out. Is that right?
That is right. I just would just take the entire box.
Yes. Oh, okay, all right.
Was the box sealed? I'm sorry to...
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, okay, when you receive the cash at the shopping complex next to Lenseria, would it be in a box? Or what? How would the cash? Would it be in some box or in some bag or what?
Yeah, it would be in a brown carton box normally.
Would the box be sealed?
Sealed.
Okay, so that if you interfered with it, it would show, or not really?
Yes, I guess it will show if I interfered, yes, because, yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And then so you then take the box with the cash from the company secretary's safe and go to Mr. Gavin Watson's safe.
Correct, Chair.
But when you did that, would Mr. Gavin Watson always be there when you were going to put the money into his safe, or would you do it when he was not there sometimes?
No, I would do it when he's there. He would call me to his safe.
Okay.
I would only take it to his safe on his instruction. And then he would meet me there normally, Chair.
And then when you arrived there, would there be a counting of the cash before it was put in between yourself and Mr. Gavin Watson?
That is correct, Chair.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
So, in summary, Gavin Watson would order a specific amount of cash, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
He would have knowledge or access to knowledge of how much was paid to the third party by way of transfer, bank transfer.
I would take the bank transfer with me to the safe. And yes.
And then he would then presumably be able to calculate how much money should have been in the box.
That is correct, Chair.
The order amount, invoice amount less 12%.
That is correct, Chair.
And you will recall on the video, after you take the box, there is a counting of cash and a discussion of 6,000 Rand short.
That is correct, Chair.
The counting process about which the Chair had now asked you, is that the same process that occurred in the video?
That's the same process, Chair.
Approximately how much cash was collected by you during the period that you arranged cash deliveries from Equal Trade?
It was approximately between 4 and 6 million Rand a month, Chair.
All of that came from, would be coming from Equal Trade?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay.
What was the purpose of this generation of cash? For what was the cash used?
It was used for bribery, Chair.
Any other purpose?
And some of the staff that was involved in the process of arranging for the cash, the administrative process, would receive an amount of cash every month as a bonus, if you want to call it like that. But it was not limited only to people that were involved in arranging the cash in terms of staff. Other staff members who wasn't involved in the process also received cash amounts every month.
Did you ever receive cash amounts?
I received 20,000 Rand per month, Chair.
In cash?
In cash.
That was in addition to your normal salary?
That is correct, Chair.
And your normal salary was processed in the normal way salaries are processed EFT or whatever.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes. And, but this particular 20,000 rand that you are talking about, which you got per month, was paid to you in cash.
It was paid to me in cash.
Yeah.
Yes.
And who would give it to you?
Gavin Watson himself, Chair.
Yes. And from when, or by the time you left Bosasa, were you still receiving this additional 20,000 rand per month cash?
No, Chair, I did not receive the additional 20,000 rand a month when I left Bosasa.
So tell me the period that during which you received it, if you are able to, from when to when did you get it, or was it a once-off payment, this 20,000 rand cash yourself?
No, I received it over a period of, it started, if I can recall right, it started in 2005. The
Yes.
amount was not always 2,000 rand, 20,000 rand a month, Chair.
Yes. Yes. So you received a monthly payment of cash, and the amounts differed because it increased over the years, but this type of payment to you ended when, if you can
This
remember?
type of payment to me ended when I left Bosasa in the month of November 2017. I did not receive any cash payment.
Are you saying you received these cash payments until November 2017?
That is correct, Chair.
And these payments had started in 2005, if you recall?
If I can recall right, yes.
More
Chair.
or less there.
More or less, yes.
Yes. Do you recall about how much it was when it started?
I recall it was about 5,000 rand, Chair, when I started.
Yes, and then it increased over the years.
Progressively over the years.
And do you recall when it started to reach 20,000 rand a month?
Chair, more or less, I would say in 2013, 2014.
Yeah, or 2013, 2014, thereabouts.
Yes, Chair.
And then it continued as 20,000 rand up to the time, up to November 2017.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes. November 2017, is that when you left Bosasa?
I left Bosasa, so to November 2017.
Okay, thank you.
So, sorry, Chair.
Yes.
So the last payment I received was she would have been in October 2017.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, as I recall, the video footage that was shown to the chair during the course of Mr. Agrizzi's evidence, there is a clip or portion where Gavin Watson actually gives you money. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Was that one of the cash payments for your purposes?
That is correct, Chair.
And that video was taken according to your statement, and I presume that record is on your cell phone on the 28th of March 2017.
That is correct, Chair.
Did you always receive this additional cash from Mr. Gavin Watson personally, or did you get it from somebody else within Bosasa on other occasions?
I recall mainly from Gavin Watson if he was around, but if he was not present at the office at the time, I recall his daughter Lindsay Watson would bring me the cash.
Would give it to you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
In paragraph 71 of your affidavit, Mr. van Tonder, you record benefits received from Bosasa or Gavin Watson. Would you detail these for the chair?
It was mainly paid overseas holidays, tires to be fitted to my car, and also maintenance on my house.
Let me just take you back to what we were talking about a minute ago, the extra cash, monthly cash. What was your understanding of what the purpose was of this extra cash that you were being paid every month?
My understanding was that it was extra cash given to me to keep quiet. Because Gavin, Chair, if I may, Gavin Watson used to say to me, remember, you are also compromised now.
Did he say that, did that coincide with when he would be giving you this monthly cash, or not really?
Not really, no, Chair, no. But I recall Gavin Watson would also say to me that all the people that he pays, remember, they are all compromised now. So, and his understanding is that they would keep quiet because they'll get into trouble should they talk out.
Okay, thank you.
Did you know of a concern called Blake's Travel?
Yes, I do, Chair.
What role did it play? Did Blake's Travel play in the affairs of Bosasa?
It was the travel agent that Bosasa used to book travels and accommodation.
For whom?
For its business dealings.
Right. Who benefited from these travels or these travel arrangements?
It was, if you say benefited, do you mean people outside of the business of Bosasa, Chair?
Yes.
It would be people within the South African government, and important people, as those were some of the people that benefited.
So Blake's Travel would arrange travel and accommodation, you say, for people well placed within government.
That is correct.
Who would pay for the travel and accommodation?
Bosasa would pay for the travel and accommodation, Chair.
Presumably then there would have been records in the possession of Blake's Travel evidencing these arrangements.
That is correct, Chair.
Did you know of that?
I'm aware of it, Chair.
Were you ever given any instruction in relation to these records?
Yes, I was instructed by Gavin Watson to destroy the related documents.
To destroy which documents?
It was documents which we've collected. Angelo Agrizzi and myself we were instructed by Gavin Watson to drive to Blake's Travel and to collect all incriminating documents in terms of these special VIP travels. And we collected that with some computers, and we were instructed to go to destroy that we collected.
Yes, before you go on, you mentioned VIP travels.
Yes.
That is a reference to whose travels?
Those were travels relating to members of South African government and other important people, as this was at the time of the SIU investigation. And in the SIU investigation, that, if I can recall right, there was some, the travels was addressed of outside of these VIPs outside of Bosasa, and therefore we had to collect it to destroy the evidence.
So, but are you saying that the SIU got information that there were people outside of Bosasa for whom Bosasa had paid for their traveling, and before the SIU could lay their hands on the documents proving that, you were instructed to destroy them?
That is exactly right, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. What would be the ranks, as far as you recall, in terms of what you knew then before the records were destroyed? What would be the ranks of the type of people that Bosasa was paying, for whose traveling Bosasa was paying via Blake's Travel, the officials? What ranks are we talking about?
Chair, I don't know what ranks it was. I didn't really.
Or you didn't know the names,
No.
or you just knew it was VIP officials in
That's-
government?
Yes,
That's
Chair.
all you knew?
That's all I knew, Chair.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Did you carry out the instruction?
Yes, I did, Chair.
Please tell the chair what you did.
We took the invoice books and the computers collected at Blake's Travel, and we drove with it. We took it to a place called Leipart's Vlei. It's an old mine hostel complex, which is just across the road of Bosasa head office. There was a hole dug with a TLB tractor, and the collected stuff was thrown in this hole. Fill was poured over it, set alight, and after a while it was covered with the soil again. The hole was covered by the soil again, and a big concrete block was placed on top of it.
You don't deal with it here, but do you know whether Blake's Trail was ever compensated for the loss of its computers?
As far as my knowledge is that Bosasa bought new computers to Blake's Travel.
The invoice books on your evidence at least related to the VIP account and dealings with Blake, or dealings between Blake's Travel and Bosasa had now been destroyed. Correct?
That is correct.
Was anything done to reinstate invoice books?
Well, the invoices which was on record at Bosasa was replaced by invoices also from Blake's Travel, but with different detail written on it.
The different detail, did this accurately reflect actual travel that had taken place?
No, it did not, Chair.
They were fictitious.
It was fictitious, Chair.
But do you know whether, so it was a completely different information that was put on the invoices compared to the information that had been destroyed?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay.
Let's move on then to paragraph 75. You deal under this head with Messrs. Danny Mansell and Patrick Gillingham. Tell the Chair, please, what happened in or about 2000. Firstly, is that a correct date?
It was approximately the year 2000.
What happened
Approximately
between
2000, Danny Mansell, which was the managing director of the Humber operations at the time, had a disagreement with Gavin Watson. And as a result, Gavin Watson purchased the shares, Danny Mansell's shares in the Humber operations.
And in 2003?
In 2003, Danny Mansell returned to the company as a consultant as he sold his cattle farm in the Eastern Cape. His services was required in a potential business deal with Rand Water Board, which involved cattle.
All right, as I understand it, we don't need to go into any detail in relation to that transaction unless you wish to tell the Chair anything about it.
No.
But between 2000, the time of the disagreement and sale of shares, and 2003, was Danny Mansell involved in his own business or farming operation?
That is correct, Chair.
And he had, for all intents and purposes, left Diambu or Bosasa?
That is correct, Chair.
Then in paragraph 77, you talk of an introduction to Patrick Gillingham. How did that occur?
Well, on a few occasions, I've noticed that certain officials from the Department of Correctional Services visited our offices, and they were dressed in full uniform. I was introduced by Patrick Gillingham in one of these visits. Danny Mansell introduced me to Patrick Gillingham in one of these visits. That is how I met with him.
At that stage, did you know of any work that Bosasa had done for any government entity or in relation to any government operation?
Bosasa had commenced with extensive upgrades on the kitchen at the Lindela and Youth Center facility in Krugersdorp. And I was told by Danny Mansell it is to prepare for a tender regarding correctional services, a kitchen tender.
On the 25th of February 2005, did you have occasion to assist Patrick Gillingham in any regard?
Yes, on that date, Danny Mansell arranged that I fly Patrick Gillingham in a private aircraft to Mafeking. Back the next day is 26th of February. Patrick Gillingham just told me the reason for the visit is he had to meet people in Mafeking. That was the only reason he gave.
Right. Who paid for the flight?
Bosasa paid for the flight.
Would you look at AT4, please? That's on page 38 of T1. Your statement says that that document shows that Bosasa paid rental for the aircraft. Is that correct?
Is
Page
that
38?
Oh, 38, sorry,
38.
apologies. This annexure, Chair, is merely a copy of my flight logbook, just as proof that I did the flight.
So this shows you say that you did the flight, but it doesn't show who paid for it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I'm not sure we need to go into any detail in that regard. You say the flight took place and Bosasa paid for it.
That's exactly what it was.
Let's go on then to paragraph 79. Did you receive information from Gavin Watson at any stage in regard to Danny Mansell leaving the business?
Yes, I did, Chair.
What did he tell you?
Gavin Watson informed me that Danny Mansell is immigrating with his family to America.
Did you receive any instruction in this regard?
I received an instruction from Gavin Watson to accompany Danny Mansell to the United States in order to make sure that he doesn't turn back.
Mr. Pretorius, I have made a correction, and Mr. Van Tonder on 79, because it says Mr. Mansell was immigrating. I think it was intended to say emigrating.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I just...
Yes, I also looked at that. The word immigration and emigration are used later on as well.
You intended emigrating.
Emigration.
Yes, well, it depends.
Well,
Again,
from where?
one needn't be too semantic, but he immigrated into the USA, according to the statement, or he emigrated from South Africa to the USA. So I think we can...
But the first sentence of 79 can't be, it wouldn't be correct if it's immigrating. The way it is, it
Well,
has to
that
be
depends.
emigrating.
Chair, far be it from me to argue the semantics, but he emigrated from South Africa and immigrated into the USA. So perhaps we should put both words there.
Well, the witness says he intended emigrating from South Africa.
Emigrated.
Yeah.
Yes.
My
Perhaps that's
apologies.
right, yes. Chair, I give up. I can't recall whether I asked you, who paid for the airline tickets
Bosasa paid for the airline tickets, Chair.
for Mr. Mansell and his family?
That is correct,
And
Chair.
your airline ticket?
As well, Chair. They paid for my airline ticket as well, Chair.
Just repeat the purpose of your accompanying Mr. Mansell to the USA.
The purpose was to make sure he does not turn back. He must go to America and he must stay there.
Why would anyone want Mr. Mansell to stay in America?
Because Mr. Mansell he was very much involved with unlawful dealings in the past regarding the business of the company and specifically correctional services.
What was contemplated you would do if he changed his mind at a practical level?
No, I was just told to make sure he doesn't turn around. I would just have to get him there.
Okay. All right.
It was an instruction.
Yes,
To
Mr.
make sure
Pretorius.
that he actually went to the USA and nowhere else? All right. Was this departure at the time of the SIU investigation?
That is correct, Chair.
Was there concern as to whether Mr. Mansell would be let out of the country?
There was indeed a concern that Danny Mansell's passport might have been blocked at customs at the Tambo International Airport because of the pending SIU or ongoing SIU investigation.
Was anything done in relation to that concern that you know of?
Yes, Director Papaleshwabane is a company director within Bosasa, made sure via his contact within Department of Home Affairs that customs control would not block us.
Was that done to your knowledge?
I don't know whether it was blocked or not, but we managed to pass through customs with no problem.
What did you observe about Danny Mansell and his state of mind at the time of his departure?
I recall that Danny Mansell was extremely stressed out when I met him at the airport. And I asked Danny Mansell how he was feeling, and he actually had tears in his eyes, and he replied that it felt like it was very unreal to him that he's actually now moving to America. And he was saying to me that his mind doesn't really want to accept the fact that he's now moving from South Africa to America.
Did you have any prior connection with the USA?
Not that I'm aware of, Chair.
Yes. He was a South African citizen.
That is correct, Chair.
Yeah, and he had, as far as you knew, he had always been based in South Africa.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes. Did he also know why he was being accompanied by you, why you were accompanying him?
I don't know, Chair.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
How did you feel about the whole matter regarding Danny Mansell's emigration?
I actually felt sorry for Mr. Mansell because of his state that he was in. And may I, Chair, refer to an email which of his to myself and Angelo Agrizzi, where he wrote, when I met Gavin Watson.
Sorry, before you go on, it's at page 39 of your bundle. T1.
Yes.
It's an email addressed to Mr. Agrizzi and Andries van Tonder.
Yes, did you want to read it?
I'm sorry, I'm incorrect. It's an email addressed to Mr. Agrizzi, copied or forwarded to you.
That is correct.
At a later stage.
Is that the one you wanted to talk about, Mr.?
Yes, yes, Chair.
Okay, do.
Now, just quote a paragraph. He says there, when I met Gavin, I was in a well-paying job, which I lost due to my association with him. Since then, I have had to start over 5 times in 16 years, once every 4 years.
Yeah, that's the second paragraph from the end of the email.
That's right, Chair.
Okay. Yes.
And then also, if I may, Chair, in the paragraph before that, he says, here I am at 62 with not a cent on my name. Last year I cashed in my annuities in the hope that work will flow in more regularly.
When this email was sent, had Mr. Mansell already emigrated, or was he still in South Africa?
To my best of my knowledge, he was still in South Africa, Chair.
You say in paragraph 82, in fact, you left for America during January 2013.
That is as best as I can remember it, yes, Chair.
Do you know whether Danny Mansell is receiving money or received money from Bosasa after he left South Africa?
Yes, Danny Mansell received an amount of $7,000 per month from Bosasa since he left Bosasa. And when I left Bosasa, he was still earning it. The payment was made every month to Mansell.
The documents marked 86 at page 41 and following of bundle T1. What are those documents?
Those are copies of invoices he would send to Bosasa on a monthly basis for the payment of his $7,000.
Right. On the letterhead of a company or an entity called Safe as Fences.
That is correct, Chair.
Do you know whether any work was done by Mr. Mansell or Safe as Fences in relation to the invoice of $7,000?
No work was done, Chair.
And would the books of Bosasa, would they reflect this as an expense?
It would be reflected as an expense, yes, Chair.
So, for example, if you look at 86 on page 41, you will see under the head Bill to Bosasa Operations, Ship to Bosasa Operations. Underneath that, an invoice number, a date, an amount of $7,000, and an activity, consulting CCTV system integration, and a VAT number. Did that happen?
Never happened, Chair. He never consulted during that time to Bosasa.
And in accounting for this as an expense to the revenue services, would this information be available as proof of the invoice?
Yes, Chair.
A fictitious invoice or a fictitious series of invoices?
Yes, these invoices should reflect still in the books of Bosasa.
Do you know what arrangements had been made, if any, before Mr. Mansell left for the US as to how he would be accommodated there and so on? Are you aware what arrangements had been made, what was going to happen? Was he going to buy property and try and acquire citizenship, or what was to happen?
Yes, Chair. Mr. Mansell the plan was for Mr. Mansell to apply for American citizenship. That is correct, Chair.
Yes. But when you arrived there with him, did you stay in a hotel on arrival? Or were there other arrangements that had been made?
When we arrived in America, Chair?
Yes.
Chair, as far as I can recall, at the time I was also busy researching the technology of prawn farming, and we visited a prawn farm in Indianapolis. And I recall he went with me to that prawn farm. Yes, we stayed in a hotel for a period of time. I do not recall exactly where we parted ways in America, but yes, we did.
Yes, and you would have come back after what? After a week or something yourself?
Yes, I would come. I returned on my own.
Yeah, more or less in a week's time, after a week, or how long did you spend in the US at the time?
Chair, it was about 5 days, I would say.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
At page 41 of bundle T1, page 42 and page 43, there are 3 invoices, all in similar terms to the invoice on page 41, which you explained was a fictitious invoice. No consulting CCTV system integration consulting was done. The others, are they also fake invoices?
All of them are fake invoices, Chair.
Then you annex at page 44 a document addressed to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And in essence, the document reflects representations made to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services regarding the employment services or the employment status of Mr. Mansell. Do you see that?
Yes, I see it.
Do you know anything about this documentation?
Yes, it's a document that Danny Mansell requested Bosasa to do for him to assist in acquiring citizenship in the USA.
Talks about the functions of Mr. Mansell as an operations manager. It says it's imperative, and I'm referring to the middle of page 46 by way of example. Under the head operations manager, it is imperative to our business plan that Mr. William D. Mansell remain in the USA for the next 2 years to guide the US office in bringing these high security fencing projects to the United States. Is that an accurate representation?
No, it's not, Chair.
There was no operation that he was involved in the US for Bosasa.
He had no involvement with Bosasa in the USA in terms of business.
Yes. Okay. Actually, this document is dated 21 February 2017, is that right?
That's correct, Chair.
And it's signed on page 47, on the face of it by Angelo Agrizzi, but also by yourself.
That is correct, Chair.
Why was this document prepared, do you know? And in that respect, you can look at the amount reflected under terms of employment on page 47, $45,000 per year. Why was this document prepared in 2017?
The purpose of this document was to assist Mansell to get permanent citizenship in America. That was the purpose of this document, Chair.
It purports to be on Bosasa letterheads. Are those the normal Bosasa letterheads?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
At this time, was any extra payment made to Mr. Mansell? Do you know?
I can't recall of any additional payments other than the $7,000 per month, Chair.
At the time you left Bosasa, do you know whether this monthly amount of $7,000 was still being paid to Mr. Mansell?
Yes, it was paid every month, Chair.
Okay. Every month he would send what purported to be an invoice, and it was on the basis of that payment would be made.
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you.
In paragraph 83, you refer to attorneys representing Patrick Gillingham during the SIU investigation. Do you know whether during the SIU investigation Patrick Gillingham had been named?
Yes, Chair. Patrick Gillingham was named in the SIU investigation.
Do you know from your own knowledge whether he received assistance from attorneys?
I know that, yes, Chair.
Do you know who paid the attorneys' bills?
Bosasa paid the attorney's bills through another company.
I'm sorry to take you back to Mr. Mansell again, Mr. Van Tonder. Sure. Is your evidence that, as far as you could tell, Mr. Mansell was not happy about going to the US, or you don't know?
I don't know whether he was happy or not happy or not.
Yes.
But I mean, for a person to be tearful, he must have been not happy.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair. 87 appears on page 48 of bundle T1. What is this document?
Which page, Chair?
48.
This is correspondence from from the attorneys in respect of payments required for legal services rendered to Mr. Patrick Gillingham.
Right, it's addressed to you,
That is correct, Chair.
and you knew what this invoice was for. Correct?
That is correct, Chair.
How was Synchroprop CC involved?
Synchroprop CC paid for these legal fees. The attorney's firm invoiced Synchroprop for payment.
That is apparent from the document at page 51.
That is correct, Chair.
Where a tax invoice was issued to Synchroprop per email, and is that your email address, andries@bosasa.com?
That is correct, Chair.
And you say these were fees that related to advice to Patrick Gillingham.
That is correct, Chair.
You speak of Synchroprop, its creation, transfer, and liquidation in paragraph 84. Please tell the Chair briefly about that.
Synchroprop belonged to Gavin Watson, and it had a property, it owned a property situated in Reinstate. And Synchroprop was then donated by Gavin Watson to myself and Angelo Agrizzi as an incentive. And we used this close cooperation to facilitate the payments of attorneys' legal fees to attorney for Patrick Gillingham, so that it is not apparent that it is directly paid from Bosasa, Chair.
Who actually paid?
It was paid out of Synchroprop bank account,
Funded by Synchroprop?
funded by Bosasa.
You said that Mr. Gavin Watson donated Synchroprop to you and Mr. Agrizzi as an incentive.
Yes.
As an incentive to do what?
As an incentive to, in my opinion, and what I could gather from this donation, was to keep us loyal to himself and to do whatever he tells us to do. That is how I interpreted it, Chair.
Did you get any benefits out of it yourselves, that is yourself and Mr. Agrizzi?
We got the property as a benefit, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Synchroprop was ultimately liquidated.
That is correct, Chair.
Was the property previously owned by Synchroprop transferred?
That is correct, Chair.
To whom or what entity?
It was transferred to another entity called Spillercraft CC, which belongs to Angelo Agrizzi and myself.
Do you know whether Patrick Gillingham and Linda T ever had houses built for them?
Yes, I was aware of it, Chair.
Tell the Chair of what you were aware, please.
I was aware that Bosasa paid for houses built for Patrick Gillingham and Linda Mti. Danny Mansell handled the arrangements for payments on these houses.
What was your involvement?
My involvement was basically to sign off on invoices where applicable.
Invoices to whom?
Invoices to contractors who was involved in building the houses.
Right. Suppliers as well?
Yes, where applicable. Yes, Chair.
Right. These expenses incurred by Bosasa in building these houses, how were they reflected in the Bosasa accounts, books?
It was reflected as construction work done in the books of Bosasa because, as I've explained previously, Chair, at the time there was a lot of building operations that went on within Bosasa, and it was just absorbed in that. To the best of my knowledge, that is how it was absorbed. It was never shown separately or anything.
And what was SARS told?
Well, it was reflected to SARS, obviously, as expenses in the books of Bosasa.
Genuine operational expenses or capital expenditure expenses?
Well, it would have been both capital and operational, Chair, where applicable.
And was SARS informed of the true situation?
SARS was not informed of the true situation, Chair.
Do you recall signing off any particular invoices in regard to the construction of the houses of Messrs. Gillingham and Mti?
I recall signing off invoices, yes, Chair.
Any particular invoices?
To a company called Rikele Construction.
Any other company?
That's the only one I can recall, Chair.
You mentioned another company in paragraph 86. Does that jog your memory?
Oh, yes. It was a company called Grant 4 Ranches, which was owned by Danny Mansell, and through which payments was also done for purposes of these houses being built.
Did you also sign off invoices for work done on houses of members of the Watson family?
Yes, I did, Chair.
Do you know how these expenses were accounted for in the books of Bosasa?
No, Chair. At that time, I was really sidelined. I didn't have any access into the books of Bosasa operations, and therefore I can't tell you first-hand knowledge on how it was accounted for in the books.
Right. The next issue you deal with, Mr. van Tonder, is the fate of documents in Bosasa's offices. I presume that's the office park.
That is correct, Chair.
You say that you received a call on a Sunday morning.
That is correct, Chair.
Tell the Chair what happened, please.
I received a call from Gavin Watson early on a Sunday morning. I can't recall the date.
More or less when?
It was at the time of the SIU investigation, Chair.
Before the report had been issued?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Please go on.
I received a call to meet him at the Bosasa offices, and he also called Angelo Agrizzi to meet him at the offices.
Do you know where Mr. Agrizzi was at the time?
He was at the Madikwe Game Reserve at the time, Chair.
All right. So you received the call. What do you do?
I left everything like always, and I drove to Gavin to meet Gavin at the offices, the Bosasa offices, where he mentioned to me that we have to clean up all possible evidence that might incriminate himself and Bosasa in terms of unlawful activities.
Did Mr. Watson explain why suddenly this instruction came from him?
He said he received information that the Bosasa offices would be raided the next day.
Please detail the instruction that Gavin Watson gave you, and we're now at paragraph 91.
Well, Gavin Watson instructed myself and Angelo Agrizzi to go through all the safes, employees' drawers, etc., to ensure that any possible sources of incriminating evidence would be removed and destroyed.
Did Gavin Watson, in giving you this instruction, express any concerns?
Gavin Watson was concerned. He kept on saying, we cannot leave these premises until we are 100% sure and certain that all possible incriminating documents were removed. And yes, that was his concern.
You've described in your evidence now the documents as containing incriminating evidence. Can you provide a little more detail? What documents were you to look for?
It was documents related to all tenders, government tenders, and businesses that he had, and business dealings he had with government entities. Detail would be possible incriminating invoices such as the travel invoices, as I've explained to you before, Chair. It would be work done on houses built. But I recall it was the documents that we removed were mainly tender-related documents, Chair.
Right. Did you go and look for these documents?
I was there myself, yes, Chair.
Did Mr. Agrizzi also go and look for documents?
Yes. Myself, Gavin Watson, Angelo Agrizzi went through and searched for possible incriminating documents.
Were these documents collected in one place after the search?
Yes. Gavin, if I may, Chair, I just want to add something. Gavin Watson personally went through all the documents in his own walk-in vault.
Are these other documents?
Yes, yes. That the documents that Mr. Watson stored personally himself.
Do you know what these documents were? Mr. Agrizzi gave evidence in relation to files that appeared on the video that we've talked about this morning.
It was tender-related documents, and I recall there were quite a few computer CD storage disks, CD disks. I don't know what was stored on these disks or the content. I never dealt with it myself.
What happened then? You say you collected documents, you gathered these documents together, you noted that Gavin Watson went through the documents in his walk-in vault. What happened then?
Well, we met Gavin Watson at his house, and that is where I recall Gavin Watson giving a lady called Miss Lindy Gous a metal tin box with some cash in it for safekeeping.
How big was this box?
It was about 50 centimeters long, and I recall it was about 10 centimeters high. So it was No, it was longer. It was about 60 centimeters long, and it was about 10 centimeters deep.
And how do you know there was cash in the box?
I saw it, Chair.
What happened with these documents subsequently?
Which paragraph are you now, Chair?
94.
94. These documents were taken to a farm near Mooinooi in the Northwest Province, and it was stored there in safes in a small outside building. These safes were installed by Bosasa.
Do you recall how long the documents remained there?
The documents were kept there for approximately 2 years, Chair.
And after 2 years, what happened?
After 2 years, myself and Angelo Agrizzi collected these documents and CD discs and took it to Buffelspoort Dam, where we burned the content in the metal drum.
Right. Why did you do that?
To destroy evidence.
Did you do that of your own accord? In other words,
It was under instruction of from Gavin Watson to go and destroy the documents. Chair.
did you burn all the documents that had been stored in this fashion and at this time?
No, there was one document that we did not burn, Chair.
Do you know anything about the relevance of this agreement?
I did not understand the relevance of this agreement, but Angelo Agrizzi told me that Gavin Watson was looking for this agreement. And it was basically an agreement, he told me it was an agreement between Gavin Watson and Linda Amti.
Right. So having concluded your business at the metal drum at the Buffelspoort Dam, what did you then do?
We drove back from Buffelspoort Dam to Gavin Watson's house, and Angelo Agrizzi gave this document that Gavin Watson was looking for. He handed him that document.
Did you see that?
I saw it, yes, Chair.
What was Gavin Watson's reaction on receipt of the document?
He was very relieved.
What did he do with the document?
He tore up this document in our presence, and he flushed it down the toilet. He even had it in a plastic bag of, if I can recall right, plastic bag of water before he flushed it down the toilet.
Right. In the next 3 paragraphs, you deal with what you refer to as a holiday with Gavin Watson. Would you tell the Chair about that, and also tell the Chair when, more or less, this holiday occurred?
This holiday was during the time of the SIU investigation, just before the SIU report was issued. Angelo Agrizzi and myself started raising our concerns, well, that was at the time of the SIU investigation, about the way things were done at Bosasa in order to get various contracts from the South African government. Referring to bribery. Myself and Angelo Agrizzi believed that Bosasa's services delivery was good enough to get new business on merit, while Gavin Watson believed that Bosasa had to bribe people to get new businesses. And that was the difference in opinion we had. Gavin Watson then took Angelo Agrizzi and myself on a holiday to Italy and France.
Mr. Agrizzi referred to a holiday that included a trip to Paris. Is this the same holiday?
That is the same holiday, Chair.
And Whilst you were in Paris, did you receive any news concerning the SIU report?
Yes, Chair, we did receive news.
And did you actually receive the report, or a copy of the report?
We did receive a copy of the report in Paris. Yes, Chair.
Did Mr. Watson say anything about the contents of the report in relation to him personally?
I can just recall that Gavin Watson boasted that his name doesn't appear on the SIU report, so he's not implicated.
Right. In paragraph 99, you give further detail to the Chair in relation to the receipt of the report and your response and the response of others to receipt of the report. Please tell the Chair about that.
A copy of the SIU report was emailed to the hotel where we were staying in Paris. Unfortunately, I cannot remember the hotel's name, Chair. Angelo Agrizzi collected the email from the email with the SIU report from the reception of the hotel, and he studied the report during the course of our holiday. And yeah, I must say, and I may add, Chair, that after the contents of this report were discussed, it actually interfered with our holiday, as we were all extremely worried and stressed out about the content of the report, Chair. And also at the same time, Gavin Watson asked us to investigate and try and find out who had given such inside information to the SIU, how it was leaked to the SIU.
Was it your view and that of Mr. Agrizzi and Mr. Watson? You can tell the Chair the detail. Don't want to lead you unnecessarily. The information contained in the SIU report, was there view amongst yourselves that this must have come from within Bosasa operations?
Gavin Watson had that view, Chair.
And your view?
I didn't know what the source was.
Anyway, you were instructed to try and find
Correct.
out where the information came from, insofar as it was what you referred to as inside information.
That's correct, Chair.
You said you were all worried after you received this SIU report in Paris, but you did say that Mr. Gavin Watson boasted that his name did not appear in the report.
Yes, obviously his organization was implicated, and there was a great risk to him.
So he was worried to the extent that his organization was implicated in wrongdoing.
Yeah, and I would say he was also concerned that it might spill over to him and implicate him himself. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
A question that arises, and I'm not asking for your opinion, but only for any direct knowledge. Given your evidence, and given the evidence of Mr. Agrizzi, and given the evidence we see on the video recording, how would it come about that Mr. Watson's name wasn't mentioned in the report? And I'm asking for personal knowledge.
The fact that Mr. Gavin Watson never signed any documents himself that might incriminate himself.
Right. Before we move on to the next topic, please go back to page 48. You recall you gave evidence about the assistance given to Mr. Gillingham and the payment of his legal bills.
That's correct, Chair.
And you referred to the document at page 48 and a document that followed on page 51. Do you recall that?
Yes, Chair.
From page 48 to 83 are all documents that appear on the face of it to be of a similar nature, all involving Synchro Prop, addressed to your email address, and all being legal bills from the firm of attorneys. Are they all documents of the same character to which you've testified?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay. The next document we're going to refer to is on page 84, annexure 88. But let's go back to the text of your affidavit. Paragraph 100, you talk of transfer of funds into an attorney's trust account. Do you know of the fact that funds were transferred to an attorney's trust account?
I knew, yes, Chair.
Were you told by Gavin Watson the purpose of the lodgement of funds in the attorney's trust account?
Yes, Chair, I was told.
What were you told?
I was told by Gavin Watson that this was done to mitigate against the risk of Bosasa running out of funds in the case of possible freezing or applications of accounts by the National Prosecuting Authority because of the SIU matter.
Right. Would you go to page?
It would act as a war chest.
Yes. Would you look at page 84 of annexure T1? This appears on the face of it to be an email from Angelo Agrizzi dated the 27th of June 2016, addressed to Brian Biebuck and addressed to yourself and copied to Carlos Bonifacio and Jacques Mansell. The subject line is cash flow requirements. It reads, Brian, please would you be so kind as to transfer from our trust fund kept an amount of 25 million rand to Bosasa operations as per our account number normally used. We will replace the funds as soon as we've received our payments from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. That is currently 84 million rand outstanding. I trust you will expedite same. Please tell the Chair what this represents.
From time to time, Bosasa needed cash for cash flow purposes to be transferred back to Bosasa in order to pay suppliers, salaries, etc., if payments from clients were not in time. And this 25 million is an example thereof, that there was a request that 25 million be transferred from the attorney's trust account back to Bosasa on a temporary basis to assist with a cash flow issue at the time.
Are you telling the Chair then quite simply that the attorney's trust account held amounts in the region of 25 million rand for Bosasa?
That's correct, Chair.
And you were told by Mr. Gavin Watson that this was the equivalent of a war chest to protect the funds?
That's exactly right, Chair.
Right. Chair, is this a convenient time?
Shouldn't we finish his evidence? I see we are, 2 pages away or 3?
We can, Chair.
Or is that not convenient? You'd prefer
the next
to
witness is
continue
ready.
after.
You will come after this witness. I'm happy to continue if the witness is happy and you're happy.
Are you happy to let us finish?
I'm happy to continue, Chair.
Okay. I'm assuming, Mr. Pretorius, it might take about 10, 15 minutes Or do you think it will take longer? You are hesitant to commit
My
yourself.
forecast in days has been hopeless. I don't think my forecast in minutes is any better, but shall we continue for 10 minutes, Chair?
Yeah, okay, all right.
Were you ever present at the offices of any attorney when an agreement was drawn up between someone we know as Frans Forster and Patrick Gillingham?
I was present, yes, Chair.
What was the subject matter of this agreement?
This was relating to a vehicle that was, this agreement. In this agreement, Frans Forster advanced 180,000 rand to Patrick Gillingham to enable Gillingham to purchase a Mercedes-Benz vehicle. And this agreement was done as a loan.
Was it a genuine loan?
No, it was not a genuine loan.
Who actually was burdened with that payment of 180,000 rand? In other words, who paid ultimately?
Just repeat the question, please, Chair.
180,000 rand is given to Patrick Gillingham ostensibly as a loan, without going through the complexity of the loan transactions and how it was accounted for in the books of Bosasa, who actually bore the cost of the amount paid to Mr. Gillingham.
Bosasa carried the cost of it eventually.
Then,
do you remember around about when this would have been? In terms of year?
Chair, one of the next witnesses will have detail on
clarify. Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Agrizzi gave lengthy evidence concerning the events at the time of his departure and at the time of your departure from Bosasa. During the course of that evidence, your name came up frequently. And as I understand it, you were involved with Mr. Agrizzi in various negotiations and at various meetings with the Watson family. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Right. You don't go into much detail here, but Mr. Agrizzi went into a great amount of detail, supplemented by documents that he wished to present to the Chair towards the end of his evidence. Correct? We're going to ask, the legal team is going to ask you to cooperate with the investigators to look at Mr. Agrizzi's affidavit and to present to the Chair in affidavit form and personally to the extent necessary, the extent to which you agree with what he says in his testimony and the extent to which you disagree. That will be done in due course. You can review his evidence in the course of the next few weeks. You're happy to undertake that task?
I'm happy to undertake that task, Mr. Chair.
In the meanwhile, let's just tell the Chair what you say, or of what you say in paragraphs 103 and following. Do you recall that at a stage Mr. Agrizzi issued a press statement regarding his intentions to give information to the public in relation to, and to law enforcement agencies in relation to his activities and knowledge of what had occurred at Bosasa?
Yes, I recall, Chair.
When that statement was released, did you receive any communication from any of the Watson brothers?
I received a telephone call from Valence Watson, the brother of Gavin Watson, asking me to assist in persuading Angelo Agrizzi not to go ahead, not to whistleblow.
Right. Did you say anything to Mr. Agrizzi about that call?
I informed Angelo Agrizzi about the call, yes, Chair.
Right. Was it one call or did they continue?
No, Chair, the calls from Valence Watson continued over time, over a period of time.
You refer to a particular call in paragraph 104. What was the content of that call?
It was a call quite late at night, made by Valence Watson to myself, and where I had a very long discussion with Valence Watson, again, trying to assist them to persuade Angelo Agrizzi not to whistleblow.
Was anybody else part of that call?
Yes, Chair. He handed the phone to Mr. Gavin Watson, who also asked me to assist in this regard. Even Valence's wife spoke to me on the phone. They handed the phone to her as well. It was a very long discussion, and yes.
Subsequent to that call, or those calls, was a meeting held.
Correct, Chair.
In relation to the requests made in those calls.
That is correct, Chair.
Tell the Chair about that meeting, please, where it took place and who was present.
Yeah, it was on request from the Watsons. We had a meeting held at Angelo Agrizzi's house, attended by Angelo Agrizzi, myself, Brian Bebuck, brothers of Gavin Watson, which Ronnie Watson and Valence Watson, and also Jared Watson, who's the nephew of Gavin Watson.
Right. Were these meetings of any long duration?
Yes, these meetings were long and carried on until approximately 1 o'clock in the mornings, where they tried to persuade Angelo Agrizzi not to whistleblow. And they requested an undertaking from him.
An
in this
undertaking
regard.
to do what or not to do what?
Undertaking not to whistleblow.
Right. Did the discussions deal with any other topic in relation to what you say in paragraph 105?
Yes, it did, Chair.
What was that?
Chair, the Watsons wanted to know from Angelo Agrizzi what to do in order for him to stop whistleblowing, not to go ahead with his whistleblowing.
What do you mean by what to do?
They were prepared to do anything to stop him. And in this case, there was an amount of money structured which was offered to him in that regard. It was in the process of being discussed during these meetings.
More or less how much?
It was more or less 50 million rand, Chair.
The discussions, did they continue over a period of time?
Yes, Chair, the discussions did continue over a period of time.
Were there negotiations over terms and conditions, amounts, what had to be done by both parties?
There was a proposed agreement that was sent to Angelo Agrizzi for him to review.
In your view, and you say you were present at these meetings, in your view, why did these negotiations continue if it was the intention simply to blow the whistle?
The reason why these negotiations continued was we wanted to show, or Angelo wanted to show, that Gavin Watson has got this war chest of unlimited funds that he can use to stop people doing in this case, to stop Angelo Agrizzi from whistleblowing. And that was the purpose it carried on. We wanted to show that Gavin Watson was prepared to bribe his way out of, or pay his way out of, any difficult situation.
In paragraph 107, you provide a little more detail of the subject matter of the negotiations. Tell the Chair briefly about that, please.
Well, as I mentioned, the offer that was discussed was in the region of 50 million rand, which included money and or a potential buyout of a business with certain conditions, such as Gavin Watson would step down as CEO, Angelo Agrizzi replacing him. And then, as I mentioned, a proposed unsigned draft agreement was emailed to Angelo Agrizzi thereafter.
It may be put to you at some stage, Mr. van Tonder, that the real reason for the breakdown in negotiations was that Mr. Agrizzi was dissatisfied to the extent that he would not really be in control of the business, to the extent that that might have formed part of the negotiations. What do you say to that?
Is this in this regard, Chair?
Yes. At the time of these negotiations, you say one of the topics under discussion was Gavin Watson stepping down and away from Bosasa and being replaced by Angelo Agrizzi.
Yes.
Did the agreements accurately reflect that intention, or the draft agreements?
I cannot recall, Chair. I didn't pay much attention.
I won't deal with that then any further. Was the agreement ever signed?
The agreement was never signed, Chair.
Right. Tell the Chair, please, of what you say in paragraph 109.
Well, following those meetings I referred to now, there was various WhatsApp messages which I've attached to my affidavit between myself and Jared Watson in this regard. Angelo refused to take further calls from the Watsons. He refused. Jared Watson begged me on numerous occasions to meet with him, to try and for me to mediate on this in this matter.
And do you say that the annexures at page 98 and following, AT9, are SMS messages which evidence these communications?
That is correct, Chair.
And the document at page 103, AT10 of bundle T1, what is that document?
That is a copy of the agreement which was forwarded to Angelo Agrizzi as a proposed agreement.
Yes, and it's apparent from page 111 that at least this document wasn't signed.
Yeah. That's correct, Chair.
You would just bear with me. Chair, there is one matter that I'd like to deal with in which my instructions are at this stage incomplete. So perhaps
yes.
I can look at paragraph 109 to see if anything needs to be dealt with further and to deal with the other matter, and the next witness will follow after that.
Okay, no, that's fine. We'll take the lunch adjournment, and when we come back, Mr. Pretoria still has some questions for you in regard to some matter. So do come back after lunch. We will resume at 2:15 after lunch. We adjourn.
All right.